Right, so here we are with the Fiat 500, and what I need to do is to replace this front driver side strut. Okay, as you can see, there's some surface rust and it got pulled up on the MOT, only as an advisory, but yeah, my daughter's taken the car away to university, so I figured I'd better get it done. So, right, to do this, we need to be able to get the top nut undone from the strut there, which is hidden away under this cowling. Okay, now a common problem on these Fiats is that the water runs off this cowling and goes straight into this sort of conical shaped thing here where the nut on the top of the strut lives, and as you can see that has rusted quite badly. Anyway, so I did acquire these little caps obviously after the horse had bolted. They go over the top there and they help to keep the water out of there. But anyway, we need to be able to get that nut off. That remains to be seen how easy that's going to be, but realistically I need to get better access, so this cowling has got to come out. So the cowling is held in place by the, well, not held in place, but the wiper arms come through, so the wiper arms will have to come off. There's a couple of little plastic screws that come out of here and here, which I've already taken out, and then if you pull back the rubber seal here, you see there's a little bolt there. So anyway, you have to take off these covers. They have a clip that goes in that way this side and a sprung clip in there, so you have to lift it up from this side. Okay, it comes out like that. Same with this one, I've got to take that one out. That will allow me then to get access, as you see, to the wipers, which will come off. I can get the cowling out and then see what I can do about that bolt. Right, okay, I'll put the wiper in this position. It allows me to get my hands underneath here. So you just need to prise it up from this end. It's best to give it a bit of a wobble out like that. As you can see, that prong goes into a clip there, and then that tab goes into a recess there. So that's out. We can now get to both of these wiper arms, get these off, and this cowling can come out. Right, okay, so these caps on the wiper arms, you just need to get a screwdriver or something, and they just prise out like this. Okay, it gives you access to the bolts, so you can undo those and pull the wiper arms off. Same goes for that one. Okay, so before I take off the wiper arms, I've actually positioned them back down into their park position, so that when I put them back on, I know that's where they get positioned back. So this is a 13mm bolt on here. Okay, that one's broken off, and so is that one. Okay, there's one nut. There's the other, and it's just a question of pulling off the wiper arms. Now they are a bit sprung loaded, so sometimes it's better to put the bonnet down and lift up the wiper arm so you can manipulate it a bit. Okay, by doing that you take off the pressure on the spindle, and there you see it just comes away nice and easy. So lift it up, it takes the pressure off, and then you can just rock it around a bit and it will come off. And there we are. If you wiggle it around enough, it will come off. So now we can remove this bolt here. So that's a T20 Torx. So it lifts at the front. Now be careful because you've still got your water jet hoses still attached. And then just manipulate it up out the way sufficiently to gain access to your strut bolt or your wiper motors should you need to get to them. Your wiper motor, I should say. And then it's a good opportunity to have a clear out of all the rubbish that collects down there as well. Right, you can see on the back of the cowling there's a clip at the far end, both left and right, and you can see like there's a little prong that goes onto, and then there's a series of clips all the way along that go underneath the front edge of the windscreen there. So you just need to take care. Looks like lift from the front edge and just gently ease those clips out. So while I was digging around in there to get all that dirt out, I found a previous cap that used to live on top of there. Yeah, been rattling around in there a while. Right, okay, so now I've got better access to this. I really need to try and clean the threads up and get as much of the rust off as possible to have any hope of getting this off easily. So I've put a wire wheel on my drill. Yeah, and that's cleaned up quite well in there. Okay, so that's cleaned up quite a bit in there now. Alright, so it's a little bit of a hoover up. Right, okay, now I've cleaned it up sufficient enough to be able to get an 18mm socket on there quite well. As you can see on the top of the strut, it takes I think it's a T40 or T45 hex Torx bit. So between the Torx bit securing the strut and the 18mm bolt, theoretically you should be able to undo that. Obviously subject to any corrosion and whatnot. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to be spraying on some penetrating oil onto here and let it sit in there for a while, see whether that will aid its release. So yeah, we'll leave that for some time and come back to it. We're back with the strut and the nut. We've allowed the penetrating oil to soak in as best as possible, so hopefully that will make a difference. We have now put a Torx bit in the top of the strut so that we can hold the strut, and we're going to take our 18mm spanner and apply that on, and let's see whether we can dislodge this. So it seems to be working. Right, so I've got it off to a certain degree and now it's got very tight again, so I think we're going to need some more penetrating oil. I think I might have to back it off a bit, tighten it back up and work it a bit. Right, okay, so I've backed the nut right back down to its tightest point and it's left the nylon lock bit element stuck around the threads there. So I'm going to try and get that nylon bit off. That will give me more access to the threads, which hopefully I'll be able to clean up. So I'm taking an old chisel and I'm going to see whether I can split off this nylon bit. So that has split. I should be able to get that off. Yeah, that's off. So that's off and out of the way. And now I can see that the threads are really in quite a bad way. But I'll try and give them a bit more of a clean. Right, yeah, those threads are absolutely shot. So I can lift the nut up so far and then they get jammed. So the plan is to try and file around here, file off the threads as much as I can, so that once the nut gets to a certain point it should just lift off. Okay, so I've got this file. I'm going to try and file a bit at a time and then rotate the strut around Right, okay, yeah, so I've managed to get the nut up a bit higher this time. I'm going to have to back it off again and do a bit more cleaning. Okay, yeah, so after a little bit more filing and a little bit more WD-40 or GT85, this bolt looks like it will finally come off. Oh yes, and it's off. I can't believe that. And that cup can come off. Now we can take the strut off from the wheel assembly and hub, and that should all come out. Right, okay, so we're now down in the wheel arch. This is the strut that we want to remove. We've obviously taken off that top bolt already. Okay, wheels off. Now, it's quite straightforward. There are two bolts here and here. They're 17mm. They hold the hub to the strut. Then we've got this 16mm bolt here that holds this tie rod to the anti-roll bar there. They're going to have to come undone, but before we do that, we've got to remove any attachments. So we've got this one line here that just pulls out of its position there, and then we have the brake hose line there. You just have to remove that clip. That's just like a little sprung clip that pulls off, and then the hydraulic line comes out there. Once they're off, we can get these bolts undone. Okay, so that clip there, let's just zoom in a bit. That clip there, it goes through a locating hole at the bottom, and the top part of the spring loops over. So you just have to flick it over from behind, like so. And you see that's off. It just hangs in its locating hole, and then you can pull the whole brake hose assembly off. You might just need to spray something on there just to loosen it up a bit. Okay, now to get this bolt undone, 16mm, this is the linkage for the anti-roll bar. So I could do with a deep socket really, but we'll give it a go anyway. There we go. Let's get started there. Now you might find you need to use your scissor jack to take off some of the load on the suspension strut depending on the positioning of things. We'll see how we get on. Yeah, so it looks like it's under a bit of tension at the moment, so I just need to jack up the hub assembly just to take the load off of that bolt. So there you go, I've jacked up the hub there a bit, and you can now see that that tie rod for the anti-roll bar is now loose, and there's no tension on it, so we can back that bolt right off. Okay, so that's that detached. Let's put that bolt back on there so we don't lose it. Okay, now it's just these two main bolts here. Okay, that's one bolt off. Put breaker bar on that side. It is coming loose. Okay, and that's off. Okay, so you just need to adjust the tension on the hub by adjusting your jack in order to loosen off the tension on the bolts there. So I'm just going to try backing that off. Okay, so the tension is off of those bolts now, and the strut moves. So the bolts can come out. There's one. Just going to lift it up ever so slightly. There's the other bolt out. Now then, the hub should theoretically just pull forward a bit, and you should be able to lift the strut out. Right, so here we go. That's the old strut there. As you can see, the coil still on it and all the top assembly. And there's the new strut straight out the box. So it's got a bit of a wire there to keep the piston in compressed, so they didn't have to put it in such a big box. So that can come off. So the next big thing to do is to compress these coils, this coil, and take off that top bolt, and then move all of that across onto there. Okay, one thing I am going to note is the position of the coil in relation to the damper unit itself. So as you can see, look, there's the mounting points there and there. These coils have got these 3 dots there, so I shall transfer that directly over to that in the same position. And then likewise at the top, it's got this kind of heavy rubber assembly, and on the top of that assembly you see it's kind of oval shaped, and there's a pointy bit there that's to point towards the back of the car, so that needs to go back on correctly as well. And I have actually bought a new one of those to fit onto the new one. Right, okay, so in order to compress that spring, I shall be using this spring compressor set. Okay, I bought that. I think that cost me about 27 quid. Okay, so let's get that on. Right, okay, so the first thing to do is to take these 2 bits here. This one is threaded around the body. I'm just going to move that down to its lowest point. We want to put that on there, onto that bit of spring, and then this one comes over and clamps onto it, and then this collar goes on the threads and secures that clamp there, like so. Okay, nice and tight. Okay, so that can't go anywhere. Now it's a case of extending this bit and this clamp up onto this one. And you do that by undoing this nut at the bottom. That makes it longer. Okay, so now it's long enough to hook onto that top bit of the spring there, and then you start doing the bottom bolt back up, just hand tight like that, so it stays on and it's secure. Now we need to get the other clamp and put it on the adjacent side in the same way. Okay, so now you see we've got clamps on both sides. They're as near to symmetrical as possible. They won't be the same distance that way because the fact that the coil is diagonal to the strut, so that one will always be seen further that way than that one, if you get my drift. And now these bars here, we can utilise the stabilising strap here. So we'll just thread that on to that one, and then we'll just do these nuts up tight with an Allen key. Right, okay, so now the plan is to tighten up these 2 clamps incrementally, one by one, to squeeze the coil down a bit and take the tension off of this unit here. So it's a 19mm bolt, and I'm going to stand to the side. Now as I'm doing it, I'm just feeling that everything is, yep, so that's that side, let's try this side. Okay, now I'm going to see whether I can undo this top nut. Right, okay, so this spring is compressed. Now that nut in there is approximately 27mm. Now I've got 27mm deep sockets that go on, but of course you've got to try and hold the shaft there in order to turn the nut. So it's a case of, I've got mole grips on, and I'm going to put in the Torx bit, but in the process of taking off the nut when it was still in the wheel arch, this Torx bit is a little bit loose, so we shall see. Right, okay, so yeah, I've got no purchase on the inside of there anymore, so what I might have to do is grind a couple of flat spots on the side of the shaft so I can put mole grips on there, and also I'm going to try applying some heat to that top bolt. Okay, and it's undone. So I use an adjustable wrench on the flat spots, and that enabled me to apply the irrelevant pressure to get that bolt undone. So now that top bolt should unspin off. Hopefully it will come off of those threads at the top. Okay. It's just snagging on those top threads a little. Don't want to damage the bolt. Okay, yeah, so that top bolt is now loose, but I can't clear the damaged threads at the end, so I'm going to have to do like I did earlier. I'm going to try and file them down as best as I can and see what progress we can make. Right, okay, so that's not really working, so I could try filing a bit more, or I could just slice that off with the angle grinder. I'm going to go for that. Okay, and there is the nut off, and then the top bearing thing can come off. And then we can pull the strut out of the spring. Okay, and then this bellows bit can come off. That will go on the, that can go on the new strut. Okay, so this old one is now obsolete and can be thrown away. Is the top bushing with bearing in it. That's the old one, that's the new one. And you can see that in here is a bearing. So if I pull this out, it does come out. You see that there is actually ball racing there. Okay, that is to enable the smooth turning of the McPherson strut as your wheel turns, because your strut turns along with the wheel, so it has to be able to pivot irrespective of how tight you've done the top nut up. Okay, right, okay, time to rebuild this. So this is the new strut. As you can see, I've removed the retaining wire there. That's going to be thrown away. So now I can look to put everything back on. So we need to put like this bellows unit back on. That goes down over there like that. Slide that on there, and then we can feed the damper in through the coil. Okay, like so. Lining the 3 marks up, as I said earlier, to the front of the damper, so it was in that kind of position, like that. Okay, next goes on this metal unit here, like so. Then on goes my new top bushing and bearing, with the bearing pointing downwards. That fell out. With the bearing pointing downwards and the pointy bit facing towards the rear of the vehicle, like so. And then we need to put back on the top bolt that proved to be so difficult. This one here, and as you can see, the bolt has actually got like a protruding bit at the bottom, and that goes downwards. So we'll thread that on. That's going on nicely. Making sure everything's lined up. Like so. And then let's just do this nut up. Okay, now the top of this strut appears to be an Allen key. Let's see what size that is. Is that an Allen key or is that a Torx? Actually, let me just double check. I know it is a Torx. So let's get the Torx back on there. And my mole grip's back on the nut. Let's tighten that up. And there you go, that's done up. Okay, so we can lay this back down and think about releasing the spring. There we are. I'm just going to push those bellows back up there. Like so. And then we can back off these two spring compressors. So and as we back it off, we want to make sure that the spring is seated inside the top and bottom cups correctly. So we back off each side a little bit by a little bit. Now we just need to undo these collars to take the clamps off. Okay, so that was extremely tight there. I think the tension of the spring had forced it on. I found just tapping it with a hammer just loosened it off a bit, and failing that, we've got the mole grips. There we go. There we are, there's the clamp off. And let's have a little inspection of the unit. Right, so there we are, there's the McPherson strut rebuilt with the new damper through the spring, etc, etc, and the new top bushing bearing on. Time to get it back on the car. Okay, so before we put the strut back in there, I've cleaned these two bolts up with a wire brush, and I've also just put on this wire brush fitting onto my drill, and I'm just going to clean out inside the fixings there, and then just put a bit of a wire brush over those two faces there. And now I'm just going to put a bit of grease on those as well. Okay, so there's a little bit of grease on those two bolts before they go back in there. And now for offering the strut back into place. So offer it up into the wheel arch. Making sure all your fittings, all your lines are out of the way. And I have lowered the hub right the way down, and it's just a case of raising the strut so that it lines up with the bolt holes. And there's one in. And there's the bottom one in. Take that nuts back on. for the top strut, top bolt on the strut. In order to do that, we're going to jack up the hub. And just watch it as it comes up. Okay, so that's up into its position. As you can see, that's through there now. We can now put that back over with the top nut. But before I do that, I'm actually going to drill a hole in here so that water drains away. Okay, so perhaps one there. One there. And perhaps I'll put one on the opposite side as well. Okay, let's just smooth off those sides with a file. Okay, so I'm just going to smear some grease around here. That'll get carried down on the threads as I put the bolt on. I can now put the cup over. And the top nut can go on. Like so. Okay, that's as far as I can go with that shallow socket. There we go, it's all done. So I am going to smear some grease around there. And now we can rebuild all of the cowling and the wiper blades, get all that back into place. Right, okay, now it's just a case of putting this tie rod back on for the anti-roll bar with the hub jacked up. The hole lines up perfectly, so we just get that in there, do that up. Okay, now we can put the lines back into their position. So the hydraulic line for the brake caliper goes in there. And we just need to get the little clip off of the old strut to put back on there. And then this line here goes into its position there. So there we go, guys. There's the McPherson strut done on the front of this Fiat 500. It really isn't a very difficult job if it were not for the fact that those top bolts get very rusty and get in the other bolt off of the strut shaft, particularly because at the top the threads get knackered. Yeah, so that's the trickiest bit. The rest of it is really straightforward. So anyway, that's that done. Thanks for watching. If you like it, please give us a thumbs up. Please be sure to subscribe and check out some of our videos, and I shall see you again very soon. Cheers. Bye bye.